Dear John, wonderful to have you. Um, we have been thinking about how to set up a series of salons, conversations. Maybe we could start, what's the difference? Do you see a difference between dialectic, metasystemic?
So metasystemic thinking, just to define it very broadly and simply, it's the ability to build mental models of complex systems that are interacting and evolving through time. So just finally, I should mention that as I understand Dialectics' work, then what I mean by metasystemic thinking is very similar to what he means by dialectical thinking. But plenty of people use the term dialectical thinking to refer to something entirely different. So
Yeah,
that's why I use metasystemic, because what humanity needs now is the capacity to cognize complex phenomenon, wicked problems, and complex systems in particular in relation to how you build a human society that doesn't generate existential threats like our current forms of organisation do, but instead organises or promotes the self-organisation of the good. First of all, the metasystemic thinker can see what drives those issues. An analytical, rational or concrete thinker would say, oh, well, it's rotten people doing rotten things. You know, that's that's how they tend to reduce it down and focus in on specific causes, and they personify it and use that kind of approach. The metasystemic thinker, however, would see, for example, that our economic system actually incentivizes the destruction of the environment. And it drives it by the fact that a corporation that's in a competitive market will increase its profits if it can externalize costs of production to the environment. Those externalizations might, eventually lead to, the destruction of human civilization, but it doesn't capture those costs. Those costs don't affect its bottom line. Yeah. And so it's rewarded. And then its competitors have to do the same thing, otherwise they get out-competed and so on. So that kind of dynamic is essential to recognise and incorporate it in metasystemic models. Yeah. Again, more limited thinking would lead, for example, to solutions like, we can get corporations to act in an environmentally friendly way if we make it compulsory for them to have on their boards, environmental experts or whatever. And of course, that ignores this metasystemic environment that overrides that, and the only choice a corporation has is to either stay in business and damage the environment or go out of business. It hasn't got an option of staying in business and assisting the environment unless it's in a niche where it can, improve its bottom line by greenwashing and convincing people that it is environmentally concerned and so on. An evolutionary understanding identifies what you have to do to solve multipolar traps, cooperation barriers, and so on. Up until now, those few people in the world who develop metasystemic cognition do so as a result of scaffolding by accident, with accidents of genetics, of their upbringing, of interactions they have in life, and so on. And it's all different for all others. So that really doesn't help us much. How do you actually, develop something that will work for people and can be intentionally applied? That's the challenge. Humanity hasn't progressed very far yet and won't, until metasystemic cognition spreads, that a group process can be facilitated by a metasystemic coach to temporarily develop collectively a model of some complex issue. However, it's, the limitation is that that scaffolding, that moving of attention around using thought forms and quadrants, that when the scaffolding is taken away, then the group reverts to its analytical rational thinking. You need processes that enable the individuals to disembed from analytical rational thinking. A vertical movement, is metaphorically has to involve the death of the old self that was embedded in the previous level, and that the individual identified with, and that the individual thought could answer all questions that could be answered. Disembedding is essential. It's difficult. It also enables the ability to see your thinking as object, and seeing your thinking as object is essential if you're going to build new cognitive structures and so on. And disembedding is trained by appropriate forms of meditation. Actually, meditation is a method of disembedding from thinking and from emotions. The second thing that's needed to scaffold metasystemic cognition is the scaffolding of actual practices, the practicing of model building, using the thought forms and so on, enabled by disembedding. The actual embodiment of metasystemic thinking uses what is called procedural knowledge in contrast to declarative knowledge. So declarative knowledge is knowledge that can be written down and written in a book and so on. So the quadrants and the thought forms are written as declaratively, as declarative knowledge. And it's fairly clear, I think, that learning the thought forms and the quadrants off by heart and being able to get 100% in an exam about the thought forms and the quadrants won't give you metasystemic cognition. You can just be analytical rational. Humanity quite possibly won't survive existential threats this century if it's business as usual. And by business as usual, I mean self-organising harm, which our current society is almost optimised to do. So time is extremely short. However, for it to spread, you need two things. One is you need a scaffolding method that works. And secondly, you need the forces in society that drive growth in particular areas or in particular products or particular services. You need to engage those forces in order to spread it. And fortunately, those forces exist and can plausibly be engaged to drive the spread of metasystemic cognition. So the competitive dynamic between corporations in any market situation would ensure that if any corporation developed the capacity to strategize using metasystemic thinking, then that it would advantage it considerably competitively. Its competitors would have to also develop that capacity. The old saying that if you develop a better mousetrap, the world will beat a path to your door. If you develop a package that can deliver enhanced cognitive abilities for corporations, then the market dynamic will drive very quickly the adoption and use of that practice and so on.
And so what I think what you're suggesting is using competitive market capitalism to feed the cuckoo of dialectical metasystemic thinking.
I love your metaphor of the cuckoo, because what metasystemic thinking will do is enable people in power to see what needs to be done in order to tame the beast of our current economic system, which is destroying human civilization. As you increase the numbers of these kinds of people with these capacities in large corporations, you're actually, building an army that is no longer aligned with the interests of the corporations or with the current economic system. What we need is a set of processes that move individuals from analytical rational cognition to metasystemic cognition. So the set of processes to do that, which comprise the disembedding plus the practice of model building, would be the elevator that would achieve that. Evolutionary circumstances in which humanity is now embedded is demanding the emergence of metasystemic thinking. And these existential threats are the growing pains that are demanding that we develop and take this next step.